So welcome everyone. Thank you again. As I said earlier, if you're able to join today, we know December holidays, can be a little tough for folks. So we really appreciate everybody that was able to join today. We're going to go ahead and hop right into it here. So first things first, we had a preview 2 release of the 7.2 version just last week. Earlier this week. Getting my wires crossed a little bit, but what's that?
Yeah, it was. I don't recall. Was it Tuesday, Wednesday?
It's Tuesday, yes, earlier this week, and we did publish a blog. Steve published a blog on all the cool new features that we are able to ship. As we've said before, we're working to identify as many things that we can merge as experimental that we want in PowerShell potentially as possible early in the release cycle, so that we have time to stabilize and find out if these things are indeed things we want to keep. That means anything that requires a tough breaking change, sort of band-aid rip-off, we want to do now. Because we are going to be GAing at the towards the end of next year, so that gives us a chance to stabilize and find out if these things should be taken out of experimental. So as soon as possible, so that they have a chance to stabilize before GA in approximately November 2021. But I will definitely grab the link to this blog for the notes here. But I think Steve has some stuff that he'd like to show off that he worked on within Preview 2. Some really cool stuff around the ANSI rendering and PS style. Although it looks like you have that after, Steve. Are you ready to go with that demo?
No, I'm ready to go. I thought we can maybe talk about the community PR triage effort that we did first.
Sure. Is there anything else you wanted to touch on specifically within the preview release?
No, I think that's all covered in a blog post.
Yeah, definitely check this blog post out. I'll be grabbing a link real quick just so we can have that in the notes. But we can hop into the community PRs triage. So essentially, this is really community PRs and issues triage. So we've done two things in the last couple weeks. The first of which is that Steve and I have been triaging a long backlog of issues that have been marked for consideration of some kind in the past, and basically triaging them into a 7.2 consider milestone. So all this means is, hey, these are issues that the community has filed. It doesn't mean that we think that the issue should be solved necessarily as the person corrected it or suggested it, but they are issues that we want to look at and make a call on within the 7.2 timeframe. However, there's no guarantee that we're making that decision within the 7.2 timeframe. It's just sort of a smaller scope of issues that we're going to try and address. But additional triage will be needed, and it'll certainly be the case that as we prioritize these, some of them are not going to make it within the 7.2 timeframe. But we are doing our best there. Now, as for the PRs, Steve, could you remind me what was the label that we used there? Because
that would be the backport 7.2x consider.
Yes. So the committee has been triaging PRs, open PRs that have been filed. Now, there's one thing to note here, which is that there's a lot of issues currently open around code cleanup. And so, a lot of those were not necessarily, I'll leave to Steve to talk about the code cleanup a little bit actually in a minute, but there's a lot of those, and those were really not considered as part of this triage. But basically, there's a lot of contributions that folks have made. Some of these have been widely discussed. Some of them are kind of surprise PRs that folks pop in and decide that something is very simple, and oftentimes, unfortunately, the case is that those PRs are not quite as simple as they might have thought they were and do require additional discussion. So in some cases, we're going to be kicking those discussions back out to issues where we really want to make the bulk of our decisions around functional behavior before we move to actually consider a code review or merging a PR. But same sort of thing. These are all PRs that we want to try and take a deeper look at and make a call on within the 7.2 timeframe. So some of these, we may think are interesting areas, but we're not sure if actually merging that PR is the right decision or not. So, we're going to be trying to address as many of those as we possibly can. Steve, can you speak to the code cleanup and then also anything else you want to add on this?
Yeah, well, let me just talk about it in general. Like, I think that the important thing to note here, hold on, there's a garbage truck driving past. Okay, is that anything that we have marked, okay, let me cover one side that's important first. Anything that we have not marked doesn't mean it won't make it a 7.2. What it means to be marked as 7.2, consider whether it's a PR or issue, is that we're going to spend some team resources to investigate it, to figure out, the feasibility, is it a real issue, things like that. So we're trying to prioritize some of the community raised issues in PR so that we make sure those get in and not just work that the PowerShell team themselves have done. So that's kind of like the big change we're doing for 7.2. We'll see how this goes, and hopefully we'll carry it forward into future releases as well. This does mean that we may have less time to do team specific feature work. We'll see how that goes. As far as the code cleanup stuff goes, we appreciate the enthusiasm for people to look at the latest recommendations from the .NET team or the latest language changes in C# that can be taken advantage of. But we want to make sure we get any style changes in early so that we don't keep making big bulk changes across the code base that causes like merge conflicts and randomization for other folks. So at some point we will probably cut those off, and unless they're small changes, we'll defer those to potentially the next release, like big sweeping changes across multiple files, like lots of files. The other ask I have, and we discussed it within the maintainers, is we don't want to just take code cleanup style changes just because they exist. We ask that maybe the community also think about the benefits, because it still takes time for the team to review these PRs, and again, that's time that could be spent on fixing bugs and stuff like that. So it's a trade-off that we have to make.
Yeah, and there's also, I think a lot of folks don't necessarily realize just how much potential undefined behavior can be affected by code cleanup, right? There's a lot of unintentional things where we've seen stuff. I'm not sure that this is a real world example, but for instance, marking a variable as static that may not actually be static throughout the entire PowerShell code base, and therefore may introduce potential bugs, and for very little benefit, right? So we do make trade-offs where, hey, there might not be anyone that can raise a specific concern around an area, but if we don't see a clear demonstrable benefit to a code cleanup change, and it's in an area of the code that's considered fairly risky or not well understood by any one person, then we're gonna push back on those code cleanup changes, because it's not really going to help anyone. And so just be mindful of that as we're kind of making calls on these PRs, that some of them are ultimately even if it's not risky, it may just there may be no benefit, and we don't want to spend the time that we could be spending on other features or other issues or other PRs, even code reviewing, to actually really create some real benefit and value for PowerShell users.
Yeah, there was, I don't remember the exact specific example, but there was one case that was noticed by one of the PowerShell team members, that a subtle change in adopting new C# syntax actually affected the logic of the code in a subtle way that if that wasn't caught, it could have caused a lot of actual issues to come up. So code cleanup is not always just mechanical. Sometimes you do have to apply some brain cells to think about what effect to the code itself is happening.
Awesome. All right, so moving on from that, we've got some ANSI rendering demos, I think, for Steve to take over.
Let's see. Let me share my screen here.
awesome. And crank that font.
Yeah. What? Hold on. Is that the right window?
I'm seeing your terminal full screen.
Yeah. Okay. That's all right. Is that big? Big enough?
I will know in 4 seconds.
Oh, because there's the delay.
Yeah,
on my screen, it's huge. So
if it's like, I mean, for me, I probably, that prompt should probably be taking up half your screen with the message and everything. Now I'm seeing you type. It probably needs to be a little bigger.
Still bigger? All right.
I only get 23 lines on my zoomed VS Code terminal. So.
All right. Let's go with this, and people can tell me if it still needs to be bigger. But so here I just have, and for anyone who hasn't seen the prediction stuff yet, that's all this is showing down here. You know, like so that was covered, I think, in the last community call. So I'm not going to cover that today. And we have separate blog posts by Jason on that, anyways. So I do have 7.2 preview 2 here. So I'm going to show first stuff that you can do with the preview 2. So the main thing that was added is this PS style automatic variable. And the point here is that it makes it easy to add styles, which includes color and stuff like italics, to text. So if I just dump it out, then you can kind of see it shows you the actual ANSI escape sequence that you don't need to directly worry about unless you care. But what really matters here is the rendering. In my terminal, I actually have blink turned off. That's why you don't see it blinking. But you can kind of see what these styles would look like. So if I were to do, and I think I already have some pre-canned ones here. You know, you can combine these things. So the benefit here really is also, if I were to do one, is you can do tag completion, right? So foreground, and there's also still a bug in PS Readline that doesn't erase the prediction, so it's a little bit messed up. But let's do red plus, and then we can do a background, I don't know, yellow, and then we'll also make it italic. Hello, and then let me just clear the screen. So you can kind of see all that got applied, right? So again, this should make it very easy for scripters to participate in ANSI coloring stuff. And you can also call some C#. It's very similar, except it's a singleton, so it'll look something like this style dot instance dot, and then the other stuff, right? And if you look in the code base, that's exactly what I use for some of the formatting stuff. So that covers that one. The other thing that's important is because of the engine changes to support this, there's this output rendering member. So if right now by default it is on automatic, but if I change it to host, for example, then this is kind of like what Mac OS does by default on Bash. So if I do the same thing, this hello here, and I pipe this to outstring, then now I just get plain text because color and other decorations are only emitted to the host. That means that any pipelining, or if I redirect this to a file, then it'll only have the plain text. So it actually strips the ANSI escape sequences. But if I put this back to automatic, which is the default right now, and I do the same thing, then this should have all the color. Yeah, so that gets retained. And the blog post talks more about the different settings you can choose. Oh yeah, and then all the formatting stuff that used to be under private data is now here. So if I change warning here, these are all customizable, and I have one here. Right, warning. Then you can get, again, the colors I'm choosing are just for demonstration purposes. These are not necessarily ones I recommend. But it's all customizable, so you can choose whatever you want. You can make it less bright if you want. So the other thing I wanted to show is some stuff that may be coming up in Preview 3 that I was able to build because we have this checked into Preview 2, this platform side. So I have 3 quick things. Let's go to this one first. So because now we have PS style in the engine, we can do stuff like, if you remember, we had this error thing. And one of the things is we added color here to make it easier to see between like the labels versus the data. Now you can get the same thing for tables, like table headings, also for like lists. And again, this is all customizable, so I think I have one accent. So you can make it more subtle if you prefer, so it doesn't stand out as much. And of course, this applies everywhere. So get error also. Oh, I didn't fix get error yet. There's a separate PO to fix get error to use it. So this is fixed using the old private data stuff, but so that shows that one. Go back. All right, let me go to file real quick. So again, with the whole color theme, because we have the base platform supporting PS style, then now we have the ability, actually I want to go into the repo, to colorize certain types of files very easily. Again, these are just some choices I've made, and we can debate in the issue that was open what colors make sense by default. But here, this now adds a file info member to PS style. So all directories get a certain color. Again, these are all customizable. You can change it. Symbolic links get this. Executables, whether it's on Windows or non-Windows, get this. And by default, I added a bunch of archive types, and also PowerShell files get yellow. So if you wanted to add, I thought I had something pre-canned here. Let's say if you wanted to have all PDF files a certain color, then you can just add that yourself. Style, this one. All right, so now if I go into my downloads folder, where I have a bunch of PDFs, you can see now they're all in blue because I've set it to blue with italics. So again, these are all customizable, and we should discuss in the issue what should be default, and there's also some debate whether or not we should do this at all. So put that in the issue. And let me show you the last one real quick. This is the progress bar. So let me go here. Let me remind people what the current progress bar looks like. So, oh wait, I should have opened a new window to do that, or I could do this. All right, so this is the current progress bar rendering. So it went kind of quick because the download went quick. It shows up, it disappears. So with this, all right, let's go back. Let's put everything in here. Then it's kind of using some of the ideas from some common Linux commands to just have one line and it stays. So it kind of tells you what the last status is. So I have a sample. Let me show you the script so people understand what's actually happening here. Progress. So basically, to test out the code as I was writing it, I basically have this script that writes out 3 progress bars. There's a nested one, and this is what that would look like. Right. So the middle one works very quickly because it's updating every 10%. Whereas these other ones are updating every 1% to kind of just show what the animation looks like. And then of course there's a time remaining and the activity and the status. And then if you see an actual, so this is what archive module, the archive module expand will look like now. Again, there's no change in how write progress APIs work. It's just leveraging that already. It's just changing how the rendering works. Again, there's an issue open for discussion on whether or not the things I chose make sense, or whether or not it should stay or disappear after the fact and things like that. So please participate in those discussions so that we can hopefully close on some of those and get it in as an experimental feature in 3, so we can get some real world feedback as people play with that.
Awesome.
I think that's it. All right, how do I stop?
Super cool. I know that this has been requested for a while here. You know, the ability to just like these VT100 codes or the ANSI escape codes, depending on who you ask, can be very difficult to figure out. You know, going online, and they look nasty in logs and sort of things. So there's a lot of issues that are being fixed here, like stripping these from logs and doing it more programmatically, generalizing all the formatting output for files, all that stuff. So this is a really, really awesome set of changes. Thank you, Steve.
Yep.
Awesome. So we're going to go ahead and move on to the secret management and secret store RC plan. I do not believe that I have Sydney or Paul on the call today, but we can
talk to it.
Yeah, great. Awesome.
So as an FYI, like we really appreciate all the feedback. Again, the reason we ship previews is so that we can get feedback early so that we have time to address those before we hit like an RC or a GA. So we really appreciate all the feedback we got for both of these modules. So right now, so Paul, who's the main engineer on this, is currently on vacation. Sydney's also on vacation right now. But we already have, Paul's already addressed all the outstanding issues that after a triage, so not every issue, but all the ones that we think are relevant for the 1.0 release. So we are ready to have a release candidate for both of these modules, Secret Management and Secret Store, early in January. And barring any major issues that come up, we'll probably target like a GA around February timeframe. Again, we'll continue to evolve this set of modules as we get feedback, as people start using it in production, and we'll see how that goes. But yeah, so those are coming to GA fairly soon, early in that next calendar year.
Awesome. Yeah. So hopefully that GA, follows quickly, or we don't see any major problems in the RC and we can move forward. But I also just want to thank anybody on the call. I believe Justin Grote in particular, I think has created a secret management extension. There's probably more. I hope. Apologies if I missed you here, but we just really appreciate folks that have created those, that have been sort of tracking with the changes that have been made in preview, because that feedback really enabled us to have some confidence that the changes we were making were the correct ones for module extension authors, and also that indeed this is going to be a useful module for folks. And we typically see from preview to GA something like a 10 to 100x amount of usage. So the fact that we're seeing pretty considerable usage already today tells us that this is something that's going to be fairly popular. So definitely, check that out when it's available as an RC. And of course, we'll be publishing blogs for all that sort of thing. Awesome. So moving on, I know we have both Jim and Jason here to talk about Crescendo, which had a release first preview earlier, either this month or late in November. I think maybe last week.
Let's go back to the conversation here. The idea is that it's great to be able to show you Crescendo. And the idea here is that we wanted to see if we could make a framework to make it easier for a PowerShell user to automate and work with those both great older and the newer native commands. And let me kind of show you this problem. I've got ipconfig type here on Windows. I'm running PowerShell. In this case, I'm running our latest preview. And you can see ipconfig works just fine. But the problem is that if I want to start, actually trying to use this in automation, where I want to just grab the IP address and I want to use this the way that I am comfortable using it as a PowerShell user, you already know that this is going to fail. It's not going to give me anything on the screen. Now, part of this is I really wish it would work, but I need it to work with some characteristics. I want this to be something similar to what I do in PowerShell. So wouldn't it be kind of interesting if I could do something like maybe, not that. We'll do get ipconfig, thanks predictive intelligence. I should just listen to it. And you are looking at the results of ipconfig, but now when I do this, if I want to do ipconfig and thank you predictive intelligence, now I can work with that information. It's objects going down the pipeline. So I've got structured data. You notice I've got a consistent naming with PowerShell naming using a verb noun. I'll have parameters and arguments that can get auto-completed with my tab completion. This is kind of the idea, but wait, there's more. Of course, there's more. If I switch over to my Linux box, this is all going to be cross-platform. So 7.2 preview 2 running here, and I could do something like, and thanks Jim for doing this, I can invoke who? I can invoke ls. These are from some of the examples that Jim had put together. So the idea is cross-platform. You should be able to wrap this yourself. And I want to just show you quickly how this works. But I also want to let you know that, well, it's not only how you wrap this yourself. Let me just show you. I'm going to, well, here. I'm sitting right now on Windows PowerShell 5.1, ipconfig. So it's not just a new thing. What if the results of your efforts could also work all the way down level to Windows PowerShell 5.1 as well? So you could create automation. You would have a comfortable, normal way of sharing it through the module system, and you can share that out to your infrastructure, whether it be on-prem or in the cloud, and you can start building automation with what to you feels just like commandlets that are using those native commands. Now, of course, those native commands need to be located on those systems when you do this, but let me show you what this actually looks like and how this kind of works. So I'm going to go into a folder that I already have set up here, at least I think I was. Where am I now? Okay, I'm where I thought I was going to be. Now, what I want you to notice is this is a Crescendo module. How do you know it's a Crescendo module? Well, looking at it, you don't. And that's kind of the point, is that it's just a module like anything else. So you can use this, you can use it on your own on-prem, sharing it off your own servers, or you can put it, of course, up on the PowerShell gallery. Now, some of you might be saying, hey, look, I can already wrap a native command, and that's true. Maybe you already have the skill set to simply wrap a native command, or if the particular native command tool uses REST, maybe you already have the skill set to API wrap it with something like auto REST, but not everybody does. So the idea here is this. I'm going to just quickly jump into this and show you. I'm going to go into code, into VS Code, and I'm going to show you that we have these JSON configuration files. Now, why did we choose JSON? Well, be honest with you, we wanted to schematize this. And when you get the module, and I'll show you how to get it, you will get a schema, and this will help you be able to construct and validate that these JSON files are correct. Why didn't we use PSD ones? Well, PSD ones don't support a schema right now. We also felt that this was something that we might be able to, in the future, well, auto-generate a lot of this for you. So the idea here is you can specify a verb and a noun, and then the location of that native command. Along with that, you can provide some help information like a description. I don't have a scenario or a synopsis in here, but you can provide usage and synopsis. You also can set up how you want the parameters. I want a parameter called all. So when I use this, it'll be -all, but what's the original parameter so that the native command can execute properly? And I can add some additional information to that. Now that will get me something that kind of looks like a PowerShell commandlet, but I still need to get some structured data out of that. This is where right now it's a little bit challenging. We have the output handlers, and you basically construct what you're going to build as the object. And for a lot of folks, I understand, I'm looking at this and I had to have Jim help me with mine, right? So I understand that this is challenging, and this is one of the areas that Jim and I are thinking about and trying to figure out how we can improve this experience for people that would use this. In fact, one of the thoughts in my head is if we get this down to where most people that work with PowerShell can easily wrap native commands, my hope is that we would see those modules up on the gallery. But at the same time, my hope is that maybe if you were using auto REST, or maybe you were wrapping it yourself, you might find this more convenient and easier for you to maintain in the long run. Now, what happens is that when you have these JSON files created, you can then export them to a Crescendo module. Oh, thank you, Predictive IntelliSense. In this case, I'm taking 3 different JSON files that'll let me get the IP config, release it, and renew it. Now, we're also looking at where you can write the multiple functions that you want all in one JSON, so you don't have to string them together like I have here, but you'll also notice the output is a module. Now, when I execute this, I already have the module out there. Let me just show you what the module looks like. And a lot of you will recognize this pretty quick. This module is a bunch of proxy functions. If it comes up here on my screen, here we go. So what gets generated by Crescendo is it takes that JSON and then it generates a proxy function around that native command This proxy function we've been working on, we've been trying to make sure that it works down level to Windows PowerShell 5.1. So yes, I think we initially did a release. We had some ternary operators. I know I had a ternary operator in my example. So we're starting to clean that up to make sure that you can run this Windows PowerShell 5.1. And in creating this module, of course, it's just a regular module. So you can use this as you see fit, and use it any way that you would normally use a module. Let me give you a couple of things to check out. And I'll make sure that I drop these into the chat here in just a second. First of all, there is, as Joey had brought up on the screen, if you go out to the PowerShell team blogs, you'll see the blog where we announce Crescendo and how to get started with Crescendo. The module itself is Microsoft.PowerShell Crescendo. You can install that module. Here's what you get. You install that module. You need to install this on PowerShell 7.0 or above, or excuse me, 7.1 and above. And what happens is that you can now author and generate those modules. The modules, though, are good, as I keep repeatedly mentioning, are good all the way down to Windows PowerShell 5.1. So check out the blog. Also, we really are interested in your feedback, and at the same time, we're trying out GitHub discussions. So you can go out to, and this is in the blog, you can go out to our GitHub for Crescendo and you can file an issue on us, but try out the new discussions and come out here and let's talk about it and see if we want to make an issue about it. Let's talk about some of these ideas. Then we'll go out and we'll make some issues and we'll file some PRs and we'll see if we can improve this and make this better for everyone so that it's easier for everybody to wrap native commands. And with that, I want to be able to hand it over to Jim to say a few words if he'd like. And also, if you ask questions, now's a great time since Jim is with us today, the mastermind behind some of these great ideas.
What?
It's not what, Jim?
So this is very early days in this whole process. I think that there is something that we can do here, which is why I kind of came up with the idea and wanted to see if we could kind of nurture it a little bit. It certainly has a lot of room to grow, and a lot of people are very, very interested in it. I am actually on holiday now, but I wanted to show up for this meeting because I knew we were going to talk about it. But if you have the time, it would be great to have folks look at it. And I think it's an interesting. It's certainly an interesting problem that I want to solve. We'll see if this does it.
Yeah, and there was a question in the chat around the sort of original motivation for this, and I think that one of the things that makes Crescendo so compelling is really right here in line 55 that I added to the notes, which is that folks can collaborate on these wrappers and basically build them more easily in this very declarative JSON-based way, and we're hoping that folks sort of maintain open source projects that others can contribute to that can really wrap these things in a very comprehensive way, right? So
yeah,
rather than having small one-offs or different kinds of implementation styles from different module authors.
If I can just follow up on this, I wrote the first wrapper for ipconfig. I think it was 2003, maybe it was 2004 after we had an actual language. So I've been writing these wrappers for a long time, and every time it's a development operation rather than something else. And I wanted to make sure, I wanted to find out whether or not it would be possible to do this in a more general way. So I came up with this idea of generating code and kind of tried to fan it into life a little bit. So, but I've been wrapping native applications for a long time.
Let me just add something real quick, because I want to make sure people don't get confused about what Crescendo is and isn't. Like, Crescendo's purpose is not to replace the ability to just use native commands directly in PowerShell. Now, we do know that there are some outstanding issues, and there's been a lot of discussion on Twitter, on GitHub, and within the committee, trying to figure out how to solve some of the argument parsing problems that we have. But the point here is, there are some very popular commands, and if you like to use kube control directly, continue to do that. If you find issues doing that in PowerShell, let us know. We'll see if we can address those. But I think there's a good class of users who like the PowerShell-y way of using objects versus parsing text, and this makes it very easy to wrap those commands. So you get a choice.
Yeah, that's absolutely right. And indeed, I have to execute the native executable in order to make all of this work. So this is not in any way, shape, or form replacing one for the other. It's a choice. If you think you can use it, that's fantastic. But you don't have to. You can continue to use whatever tool you've been using. You don't have to do any of this. You just, but if you want to have it, this native executable, some ipconfig or kube control or Docker or what have you, if you want to use it, this might be a way to accelerate the path to wrapping those tools.
Absolutely. So as I said before, we are going to go over for this one because we had that interruption. So don't worry, we will be getting to your questions. But prior to that, I will point to Jason and Sean to provide some updates on the documentation that we've been working on with other teams.
So two quick updates. I've added some information to the PowerShell contributor guide in the doc set. There's new information about creating hyperlinks in the docs if you're a contributor. We have a new format for cross-reference links to commandlet reference. So it's a shorter way to create those links. And then also added some information about localization. We've had a few folks from the community express interest in writing localized content, and so that explains what our process is there. And I also wanted to call out a recent update to the PowerShell 7.1 release notes, the What's New article. Based on some community feedback, we've hopefully made a more useful article for you folks. So that's what I had. Jason, did you have anything else you wanted to add?
Thanks, Sean. The only thing I just wanted to do was to let everybody know, and I think I had mentioned this in the last community call as well, that Sean and I, along with some of our internal doc folks, have been working on that updatable help pipeline. And as of today, all of the PowerShell docs versions, Windows PowerShell 5.1 up through the latest 7x stuff, have now been on that updatable help pipeline. And we also have System Center Configuration Manager up on the updatable help pipeline. And Sean and I are continuing to move forward with other teams, especially at the beginning of the year. So we'll keep everybody up to date in our progress on getting updatable help available.
Yeah, and that's really exciting because, you know, a lot of this documentation has been very well updated within, you know, the web and within their respective GitHub repos, but we haven't had a programmatic way company-wide in order to bring that help down through the updatable help pipeline into your console where you get it with update help and get help. So definitely, if you're experiencing any updatable help bugs, please file them. And you know, we will be moving on to you know, to Windows and Office doc sets in the future. So thank you, both of you. These are awesome updates. So let's move on into the Q&A. Steve, do you happen to have the issue open right now? I think that the top one is around Tyler and the VS Code extension.
Yeah. I don't know if Tyler joined as a audience member, but
I did. Yeah, I actually don't know either. No.
Anyways, so Rob is still on the team. He's on the call actually, so he'll be the primary engineer on the extension. I am gonna backfill, meaning that I'm gonna hire to fill in Tyler's position. I don't have a job open right now, but I will post it on Twitter once that's open if people want to apply. We see, was anything else mentioning here? Blah, blah, blah. Yeah, so I think right now the main thing that Rob has on his plate for the extension is really addressing the stability issue, and then we'll figure out if there's other investments we need to do going forward for the extension for capability.
Yeah, and I just want to say, sort of at a general level, that with the advent of open source, I think folks see a lot more of the individuals that are actually doing the work on the teams. But at Microsoft, we're running an open source project in a corporate sponsored way, right? Which means that we're going to have engineers that join the team, that leave the team, that get shuffled around, and that's not any kind of indication of the investment that we want to make in a product. There's obviously some friction that may happen as we backfill a new engineer and get them up to speed and in terms of the code base, but this is not something where an engineer leaving means that hey, this thing's getting thrown out the window. And actually, folks that have been around for a while may know that David Wilson was actually the one who originally started the VS Code extension and left the team as well, and there was a transition period where Tyler and Rob ramped up on the extension and became the owners after that. So this is not something that is some sort of insurmountable thing or that's a shock to the system. It's just a transition period, and we're really excited that Tyler's moved on to the VS Code team, where he's going to continue doing awesome stuff in Visual Studio Code. So yeah, no need for alarm. Cool. So I'm going to pop into the issue here. Let's see what else we got going on. Right after that, following up on sudo command support, and then the call operator. So I can't comment on the sudo command support. I think we'll probably be having to look at issues all up. I know that this is a very hard one. This was something that we talked about very early on. It's not particularly easy to do. So, I don't know if this is currently marked with anything, but it's something that we just determined is not.
No, it's future.
Oh, this is specifically within remoting.
Yeah, this is. We did Paul had spent some time investigating this. I think he has an idea of how we can support this, but it's currently not on the list. I mean, something we recognize ourselves that is important. So we'll hopefully get around to it. But I don't want to say that we're going to get it in 7.2.
The new call operator, the native call operator, that is something that we would like to move forward with in 7.2, and you will see stuff in that issue. We don't have anything to comment on, I think, today, but that is definitely something that we want to try and do. But again, that is not a replacement for other stuff that we want to do around argument handling, which is also something that we want to invest in the 7.2 timeframe. This last but not least, future plans for distribution, both Azure CDN publishing, but maybe also the possibility of following the move by .NET to distribute .NET 5 through Microsoft Update. So this is something I've wanted to do for a very long time. We are looking into this for 7.2. I know I've said that in the past, but it's going to be a very high priority for us in 7.2. Being in the Microsoft download catalog and in Microsoft Update absolutely increases the number of people that can leverage PowerShell 7.1. So I will, we'll look for updates there for sure. It's unfortunately not an easy process at all. It's mostly bureaucracy that we have to get through, as well as some technical stuff around the way our MSI is packaged. So it's not a small work item, but it's extremely high value. Is Windows ever going to get the latest OpenSSH releases? I think I have Danny here on the call. Danny, can you talk to what's going on there?
Yeah, so the latest, so there was a Windows update back in October, and from our side, we had submitted the bits for inclusion inside that, I'd say, large Windows release for 20H2. It was not communicated with our team that our bits were not being included. And I think that was just due to our team kind of sitting outside of the Windows, the overall Windows structure. So the latest bits for 8.1 were not included in the updated Windows release. So there's no update for the feature on demand. We are actively working on a fix to that, and so I would say stay tuned for in the new year, and it was when a lot of that discussion will pick back up again, and I'll be able to provide a better update with hopefully some dates at that point in time.
Awesome, thank you. I will backfill that note here in a second. Yeah, so also there's a second half of that question, which is, hey, there's nothing but beta releases. That's on purpose.
Yeah.
The stable release is the one that ships in Windows. We do not plan to release supported builds of OpenSSH out of GitHub. The way that the service needs to be installed in a way that we feel comfortable supporting in a secure way is only to ship within Windows. So, you know, there is a chocolatey package out there that Darwin, who's on the call, supports and maintains. But you know, technically speaking, that's not a supported installation mechanism, though it does give you the latest up-to-date bits. But you know, we are, again, as Danny said, working through the challenges of getting the latest stuff in the GitHub repo moved into Windows as soon as possible here. And you know, while we can't make any guarantees, we're going to do our best to even update the 20H2 branch via Windows Update, which was sort of missed out on the 8.1 release. So keep your eyes peeled there. Again, no promises, but
yeah, and yeah, definitely keep your eyes peeled. And if this might be a solution, I understand it's likely not for a lot of the enterprise scenarios. We are in the Windows Insider builds with the updated bits. So if you are a Windows Insider, you can use a Windows Insider build and use the updated bits there.
Awesome. That was just notes I wasn't going to remember later. So this is a really good set of points raised by Ilya. You know, we look to the .NET team as the North Star for you know, the sort of strength of the planning process. This is not something that's particularly easy, you know, just given the you know, the number of projects that we maintain, and we've sort of always been on this train where we're slightly you know, behind getting in front of the planning, right? Like we're you know, putting out a 7.1 release, and there's internal stuff that we're making notes about, you know, we want to do in 7.2, and then suddenly we're just sort of in the 7.2 time frame. And you know, I've not done a good job personally of you know, getting ahead of that. Now I can't say that we're going to have this awesome, you know, sort of nested story thing. You know, this is I don't know if folks have seen publicly, but there is this themes of .NET page that sort of outlines their plan across multiple repos with both user stories, epics, and themes. And so, you know, you get this nice sort of nested plan. This is we're a far way away from something like this, unfortunately. But I think Ilya's suggestion to, hey, you know, post the themes in a meta milestone, a meta issue per milestone, that's actually something I'm working on right now, and hope to get out before the end of this year. So, you know, keep your eyes peeled for that issue. But I'll be linking to the milestones and issue labels that we're working on, as well as the sort of areas that we're looking to invest in. So we'll also be publishing a roadmap blog early next year that will sort of detail more of the things happening outside the specific PowerShell repo in the 7.2 timeframe. So look out for that one as well. And then we do want folks to sort of help us contribute into that. Now, I know folks have also, you know, been disappointed in the lack of progress around PowerShell working groups, which is something I published a blog on a couple months ago. That's also something I plan to work on over the next couple weeks here on some of my holiday days. And you know, we really do want to move forward on that so we can sort of decentralize the decision-making process and allow, you know, a lot of these issues that have been marked as, say, consider 7.2 or, you know, backport 7.2 consider as you know, things that can now be focus areas for people that are on those working groups to look into over the 7.2 timeframe. So again, apologies for kind of dragging our feet there, but you know, I think you're absolutely right, Ilya, and these are all things that we want to go and address. The new engine subsystems be implemented in the near time. This is also something that we're working on. You know, we haven't spoken to this extensively in the past, but we've got this concept of a quote unquote minimal PowerShell, whereby PowerShell can be componentized into separate subsystems. And we are trying to dip our toes into that. Some of that work is being done in closed source today, just because we want to move very, very quickly in experimentation. We don't know exactly what's possible and what's not, so it's sort of a rapid prototyping effort within the company. And then when we have something there to share, a prototype or something like that, then we will be sharing that. But yeah, this is special remoting. We could implement, all kinds of remoting transports if the remoting system is componentized. But I think right now we're just looking to take the entire remoting system out of the engine as it is. And then in the future, we could look into something like a pluggable PSRP system. But yeah, these are all really great points.
Can I add something there real quick?
Please.
So going back to the first part of what Eli is asking for, like we absolutely want to get there, but keep in mind, like the .NET team is significantly larger than the PowerShell team, so they're able to do a lot of cool stuff. But we're actively engaging with them, so we can learn from the best stuff that they're doing, and hopefully borrow or copy some of those things. So as Joey said, he's working on the meta issue to kind of give insight on the stuff that we as a team plan to do, and then we'll follow up with a blog post to kind of cover more details of that later, and hopefully it'll come out early, like in January. And the other thing about subsystems is, so Paul, who is the remoting expert on the PowerShell team, is looking at initially seeing that we can pull out the whole remoting subsystem as an independent module, but as a longer term goal, trying to see if we can pull out the individual transports as their own subsystems as well. So that way you can have that pluggable, and people can actually introduce new remoting things as modules. But as Joey said, only the first part is kind of what we're really targeting for 7.2, and the second part is kind of like if you can get to it.
Awesome. I want to keep moving because we are already over time here. So which team owns this now? We still own this, OpenSSH. Yes, you can still get out-of-band fixes and features, but again, those are not currently supported. And I'm sorry, but this is just simply the case. You will have to wait for Windows releases to get latest versions in a supported way. Unfortunately, again, the way that we install in a system privileged way, these things are installed by owned by trusted installer. For SSH agents to be deployed in a totally secure way that we feel comfortable with, it needs to be baked into the operating system. So I apologize for that, but that's something we're going to continue investing in. I understand, all this, and again, that wasn't unfortunately administrative oversight that this code, which we checked in back in early 2020, did not make it into the 20H2 release, but we'll be addressing those systemic problems as well in the future. Bergmeister says, regarding VS Code extension, we need publishing of a new stable version. It hasn't happened for nearly half a year. The minimum just a patch, which raises the out-of-box PSSA version, as many bug reports still come in that are actually fixed in PSSA. So I don't know how quickly we can turn around a release. Is this something on our side, folks, that we feel like is just even a release process that we could go through, or do we have a rough ETA?
We can talk about it after the call or later. I'll have to see.
Okay. Includes a new PSSA. This is a little bit off topic, very interesting, Ilya.
You can skip that one. That's yeah.
Microsoft Teams started to implement subsystem.
We covered this one.
Okay, I'm kind of quick. So 1985. So yeah, so we've talked about this one briefly. I don't want to go into too much detail here, but this is a super high priority for us in 7.2. This is argument parsing basically, and we did have another discussion on this in the committee yesterday that we want to move forward with some kind of implementation, and that may be one based on the new ARG handling APIs that are in .NET. So we know how important this one is to people, and we do want to do the right thing, even if it means potentially breaking some folks in the short term. But that's why we want to merge some code here as quickly as possible so we can find out in the preview if this does indeed break some folks. We're going to continue moving forward. I don't think, yeah, again, this is all about custom transports. Again, not something that we're committing to for 7.2, but something we definitely want to look into in the long term. We hear you on the VS Code. What are the top 5 short and long-term priorities? You'll see those when we publish our roadmap blog. Sorry. So can we get a list of currently supported cloud service related modules? So this was one that Alexander and I were talking about on Twitter last night. There is a link, AKMS/PS module compat, where we plan to eventually put as many Microsoft owned modules as possible. As I told Alexander on Twitter, I know that is not as complete as you would like it to be. There's a reason here that Windows Management Modules is a subheading of this article, because we intend to put other subheadings here that include other modules owned by other teams. But this is the format that we eventually want to take, which is to say, hey, there's stuff that are natively compatible or tested with the compatibility layer and known to be working. So, please keep your eyes peeled on this link, and we will be updating this to include more modules in the future. So, yeah, definitely recognize that that's important to people, and we will be updating that. Cool. People are updating. This is when our thing dropped. Great. Okay. Now we've got some questions. I'm going to go back to the take one on the call to look at these question and answers. So just give me 1 second. So there was one around 7.2 being LTS. 7.2 will be LTS, which is in keeping with the sort of TikTok of .NET's cadence. So will be an LTS release, and it sounds like there is a bug around sort of which versions you're being notified on with regards to updates. So that's something we'll look into. Basically, if you're on an LTS build, we shouldn't necessarily be recommending 7.1 from 7.0, and that sort of thing. We may still recommend 7.2 for 7.0, given that that's a new LTS release. But it sounds like folks also just want a way to suppress that update notification as well. Although that does get dangerous, because again, part of the reason that we do the update notification is to let people know that there are servicing releases that are security oriented. So it would be awesome if the person who asked me that could file an issue there, so we can discuss that in more detail. Is there any news about the module Windows Update Provider doesn't work for more than 1 year? Error provider cannot be loaded. I think Windows Update Provider works fine in Windows PowerShell, and I believe it works through the import module use Windows compatibility, or use Windows PowerShell. So I would love to get more info on that. If there is an issue that I'm missing, it would be great for somebody to link it to me. If you copy, Jeff Hicks asked, if you copy a colored property to the clipboard, does it include the ANSI code or just the property value? I believe, correct me if I'm wrong, Steve, that is terminal dependent, and that depending on where you're copying it from, you may actually be copying rich text that is colorized. I don't think you're ever going to copy a VT100 code out of a clipboard unless there's some terminal out there that does that for some reason.
So there's 2 different copies. There is the terminal one, and that's dependent on terminal behavior, as you described. You can also copy from the command line, like PS readline will do this. And as far as I can think off the top of my head, I think that the selection is outside of the ANSI escape sequence, so you're probably only going to get the text that's within what you highlighted. I'd have to test it, but I think you wouldn't get the starting one, but you probably get anything inside that you highlight, because that's just text.
So I'm actually going to show folks here just really quick. Yeah, that API that Steve is describing is super useful and absolutely just includes the colorized output. So if I put like as rich text, so if I do something like, I don't know, I could just create an error, right? So if I use PS console readline capture screen, which you can bind to a key handler. Oh, PS console read lot. Was that really not the thing? Did I get it wrong? You get this little highlighter deal, and then you can go like this and hit enter. And then if I hop into something that supports rich text like WordPad, and I copy that, I actually get exactly the rich formatting representation. So again, no ANSI escape sequences here. Everything else would be the same, if you're using ANSI escape sequences that are not being rendered literally to the terminal. Copy the ANSI escape sequences, technically controlled by the terminal, but in most cases, no. Okay, that was everything from the last call. So do we want to go ahead and move on to the ones in the new call? I'm pulling those up. Are any popping out to you, Steve, that you want to address?
Things are disappearing.
It's taken for a second for me to load for him.
I want to look at the published side. Nothing in particular.
We did address the one around Crescendo. Does anyone know when the Azure AD module will be available for PowerShell course? So right now, there are not any folks actively working on porting Azure AD to PowerShell core. We believe that the Microsoft Graph module has all of the same features as Azure AD, and it is being something that's actively developed and is already core compatible. So if that does not meet your needs, please file an issue in the Microsoft.PowerShell, what's this repo? PowerShell Microsoft Graph. I don't remember the name of the repo that has the graph modules in it. Here we go. MS Graph SDK PowerShell. So if this, if the new Microsoft Graph modules do not meet your needs as a replacement, it really drives me crazy when I get into this state. For Azure AD, please choose on that repo. Come on, as a core compatible replacement. And one day I'll have all the text. Great. All right, and then any news on PSU Unix completers? Is it still moving forward? We do have it in our list to still have a desire to ship PS Unix completers as part of 7.2. So this is a module that Rob wrote that basically sucks in all of the bash tab completions that exist for native utilities, so that users don't have to re-implement them in PowerShell. So we hope that this will massively expand the tab completion coverage for those native utilities without a whole lot of work on anyone's part. So you can pick up this module today on the gallery. I don't believe that there are any issues with it, as far as I know. I'd love to find out if there are, but yeah. Will be the best for community contributors to help fast track alternative PS remoting transports. Doesn't have to be complicated with the whole plugin system. It doesn't have to be, but we want it to be, because we want this to be something that's generalized and that doesn't go and bloat PowerShell going forward. So I'd love to see prototypes out in the wild. Like, these are all things that are potentially forkable, and can be investigated by individuals, and that's something that I would be interested in seeing from the community. But today we want to do this in the correct way. In the longer term time frame, it just doesn't make sense for us to make a short term investment in something that's more hard coded at this time. Can we do a small PR to just hard code the SSHXC? Yeah, I think we should handle more of this discussion. I don't want to misspeak here, so let's handle more of the discussion in the pull request. Awesome. I'll check the new tab one last time. How are we supposed to get version 8.1, 8.2, or 8.3 on Windows Server 2012 R2 and above? Unfortunately, OpenSSH, does not. We have not ever supported it on 2012 R2 outside of specific Azure VMs where we're able to control the entire image. So again, my answer is, you can use that chocolatey package, or you can use an Azure VM, which is fully supported. But at the end of the day, we've not committed in the past to supporting OpenSSH on 2012 R2. It's not a platform that we test on outside of that Azure VM, and we don't have a deployment mechanism for installing it in a secure, trusted way within those images. So I apologize that that's something that's important to you, but unfortunately, that has not been something that we've deemed sort of worth investing in at this point, given the relatively lower usage of 2012 R2 and the fact that it's very, very difficult. Yeah, I apologize there, but as regards for the the rest of the OpenSSH versions, which is very strange. It looks like I lost your original reply. There was something about hey, we just need updated beta versions, and yeah, that's something that we are also going to be working on, which is just moving that repo forward to match up with OpenSSH Portable. So to be totally transparent, a lot of the DSC work that we have been doing, we've gotten some help from one of the individuals that works on OpenSSH, Balu, and so he's been doing a lot of that DSC work over the last couple months. But OpenSSH is still a huge priority to our organization, and that's a very, very temporary thing. So, I think you're going to see a lot more movement in the OpenSSH repo pretty soon here. Says chocolatey package is not being updated, though. I unfortunately can't help you with that. That's not something that we own or maintain. I think Darwin may or may not be on the current call, but that's just sort of where we're at, right? We support it as an inbox Windows component. We keep the source open because we're trying to do the right thing by the OpenSSH community and provide that source to everybody. But it's not something that we've ever signed up to do, just to backport or install OpenSSH to older versions of Windows. So I'm sorry for that, but it's really just something that's extremely high investment. Cool. I think it says the module Windows Up provider works not with Windows PowerShell 5.1 and work not with PowerShell 7X. That is news to me. Has it ever been planned to support SSH remoting without OpenSSH like libSSH or even PuTTY? It has been considered. It's not something that we deemed worth doing because there's essentially there's a lot of differences in the implementation with libSSH, with PuTTY's library. There's also a totally new security review we'd have to do. There is definitely something to be said for the way that OpenBSD handles open source, handles security updates, that is far and above what we've seen from a lot of the other SSH related packages. And I think a lot of folks don't realize just how much work went into hardening the OpenSSH implementation that we're currently using, and how much new code had to be contributed in order to harden OpenSSH specifically for Windows. And so, and that was on a project with extremely high code quality. OpenSSH Portable is a very well maintained project. So, we did look into that and sort of thought that there wasn't a whole lot of value add there in terms of looking into that libSSH. But the anonymous person here on the OpenSSH said, sorry, no published build from GitHub. I manually have to compile it. Yes, that is true. That is by design. We don't want folks, going and well, I actually don't know if not compiling it is by design. We may have some executables that are available or should be available, but we can follow up in an issue, I think, on the OpenSSH repo. The Windows Update Provider not working with 5.1 is news to me. I don't not think that was actually this is probably going to say it requires admin. Provider load failure. You are correct. This looks to be very, very broken. Oops, that's not spelled right. So unfortunately, like I said, we don't own that module. I would highly encourage you to file something in Windows Feedback. So specifically the Windows Feedback hub here around Windows Update. Other folks should update that if it is indeed the case. That looks very bad. So I will. I'll try to see what I can do to follow up internally. It's unfortunately not easy to necessarily track down the person that owns that without going through the feedback hub, and going through the feedback hub is the fastest way to elevate it, especially if other folks vote it up within that. So please, file feedback in the feedback hub around the the Windows Update Provider module not working. There is one in the gallery, I think, that's very well maintained called like PS Windows Update or something like that. I would definitely check that out to unblock you in the short term if that's something you're hitting. I got PowerShell remoting over SSH without SSH done by making a fake SSH.exe. So Mark is saying, hey, we're hard coding to open SSH on the box. That's actually not the case. We hard code to an SSH.exe on the path, which is why PowerShell works. PowerShell remoting works from other operating systems as well, where we don't only open SSH implementation. So you can technically use. I think some of this has worked perfectly fine in the past with Git Bash's SSH client implementation. I think we are hard coded to the SSHD implementation specifically, but if you have someone else's SSHD implementation and it supports arbitrary subsystems, that should also work just fine. So, it's not a hard code to Windows System 32 OpenSSH SSH.exe as far as I know. I'm sorry to hear that, B, that you've published that X times in the feedback hub. I will try to again look into you to see if that's possible. So to escalate, but yeah, that is true. Exactly how I managed to replace it. I prepend my replacement in the path before the real one. Yes, and actually, just so folks know, even our feature on demand, like we specifically append the OpenSSH System 32 directory to path, so that if you already have an SSH implementation on your system, it's going to continue to take precedence over the one that we install by default, so as to not create any breaking changes or for you to unexpectedly not be using private keys that you may have been using in the past with Git Bash's SSH implementation. So at this point, we have run way over. Thank you everyone for joining today. Apologies again for the call being cut short. Really loved the involved conversation around SSH, and really hope that everybody had a great PowerShell year. I know it's been a crazy year, so thanks everyone for just continuing to be awesome members of our community and continue to give us all this great feedback and using PowerShell. So thanks again. Have a great holiday. Any last words for anyone on the team?
No, thanks to the community, and looking forward to 2021 for different reasons, for various reasons.